we need to know a little bit about what they do. And one of the main things that they help form that helps allow for more complex development of organisms is something called the coelom. Okay, spelled C-O-E-L-O-M. Coelom. Now, as you're listening to this and as you're taking your notes, be thinking about our essential question, the main thing that we're trying to learn here, which is, what is a coelom and why is it important to the evolution of life? So first, just a basic definition. A coelom is a hollow, fluid-filled cavity that is completely lined with mesoderm tissue. And remember, we talked about mesoderm tissue just a little bit, mesoderm germ layer, in the previous video lecture on what is a germ layer. Now, there are some advantages to having a coelom, and that's the main thing I want you to focus on, are these advantages. So the first advantage is that it allows for more space for internal organ development. So it gives it a room, it gives that developing organism a room for internal organs to develop. And so remember, when we're talking that word cavity, cavity just means an empty room. Now, another advantage that it does is it protects the internal organs from shock. So as you're running around, it protects those internal organs from shock from the outside. A third thing it does is it allows for organisms to be larger. Okay, everything that we've been studying so far to this point is fairly small. So jellyfish, coral, anemones, sponges. Organisms that have no coelom need to use diffusion to move nutrients and gases throughout their body. So gases would be like oxygen and carbon dioxide getting out of their body. And diffusion, there's nothing wrong with that. It works well if you're a small organism, but there's a limit to how far diffusion works. How far, for example, oxygen can move via diffusion. Now, another advantage of having a coelom is that it allows organs to be attached to each other in a specific order, and still being able to move about freely in the cavity. Okay, so this allows for the complex development of organ systems. Now, there's lots of language around this, of course. And so it used to be that scientists used to classify organisms based on if they had a coelom or not. And that's kind of an old classification, and we don't use that really anymore, but some of the words are still out there, and it's helpful to know these words. So the first word is acoelomate. Now remember that anytime in science, anytime you add that letter A in front of a word, it always means non or not. So an acoelomate means it's not a coelomate. It does not have a body cavity. So acoelomates have no body cavity, no coelom, and they're usually organisms that have one or two germ layers. There's an exception to that. Sponges, remember, have one. Cnidarians have two. Flatworms have three, but they don't have a coelom, and so we call them acoelomates, so that's kind of the exception. Now, the second word that you need to know in regards to coeloms is a pseudocoelomate. Now, pseudo means fake, anytime you see that in front of a word. So a pseudocoelomate is a fake coelomate. And it has a body cavity, so it does have kind of a coelom, a partial coelom, but it's only partially lined with mesoderm, so you don't see that third germ layer fully developed and fully being utilized to make a full coelom. So they do have three germ layers, and an example of a pseudocoelomate are roundworms. So examples of acoelomates are sponges, cnidarians, and flatworms. Of pseudocoelomates, roundworms, that we're getting ready to study about. And the third and final word is the actual true coelomates. These guys have a body cavity that is completely lined with mesoderm, compared to the pseudocoelomate that has a body cavity that's only partially lined with mesoderm, compared to an acoelomate that doesn't even have a mesoderm. Now, it has 3 germ layers like the pseudocoelomates, but again, they have a complete body cavity completely lined with mesoderm. And examples of this are annelids, which are segmented worms, arthropods, mollusks, echinoderms, and chordates.